Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another very exciting episode of the Think Like a Cat podcast. My name is Hamza. This is where we explore the world of healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship. We look at all the things that you need and all the things that you need to prepare for as you embark on this journey of healthcare entrepreneurship and healthcare innovation. So welcome once again to the channel. And today's episode is going to be I'm going to be doing this in two parts just because it's going to be a long conversation, but we are going to be looking at basically how healthcare has evolved over the period. We are going to be looking at where we've come from in the world of healthcare entrepreneurship and innovation, and where it's headed to. This is to prepare your mindset and prepare you as a healthcare entrepreneur to start looking into what you need to be focusing on as far as preparing yourself for the next phase of healthcare entrepreneurship is concerned. So this is going to be very helpful. And in looking at this and just reflecting on how healthcare entrepreneurship has evolved over the period, it's important that we pay attention to the fact that the future of healthcare is going to get increasingly complex. And in the face of all the new technology and all the new things that are happening, it's important we understand how this transition has happened over time to where we are today. And at the end of this conversation, we will be looking at how the future is going to look like. What is the next step? What is this going to look like for everybody? So let's jump right into it. And if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. I'll take you through some historical landmarks, important things that have happened in the history of healthcare entrepreneurship and where we are right now. So, in the beginning of all this, healthcare entrepreneurship and innovation was mainly driven by just a handful of companies. So we had very big pharmaceutical companies that really invested a lot of money into healthcare entrepreneurship, healthcare innovation aspects. We had big hospitals who were doing the same, and we also had medical manufacturing companies that invested so much. So there were just very limited players in healthcare entrepreneurship and healthcare innovation. And this was way back in the beginning, the 90s, where a lot of these things were just it was capital intensive. There was no room for any form of innovation outside the financial requirements that you need to test your ideas out. So these companies dominated this for a long time until the the 90s and sometimes the early 2000s. Now, during this time, we started having a lot of biotech and medtech companies coming on board. And what did these people do? These smaller companies started challenging the status quo. So they started developing very novel medical devices with very limited resources most of the time, and were able to make a lot of groundbreaking contributions to the medical fraternity. And this started opening up the road for healthcare entrepreneurship when these biotech and medtech companies started coming in. So we had things in the spaces of healthcare telemedicine. We had things in the space of healthcare data management and all that. So these were very important aspects of the growth as far as healthcare leadership and healthcare entrepreneurship was concerned. Now, when you look at what the contribution of these companies have been, for instance, let's look at Intuitive Surgical. Now, for those of you who've never heard of the Da Vinci system, now the Da Vinci surgical system it began as a small setup, and this is the centerpiece of robotic surgeries right now we have in the system. Now, this came in the middle of all this revolution where we started having these small companies coming into the space and being very innovative with what they had. Now, this is from the 90s all the way to like the 2000s when these companies started emerging. Now, we move forward to the 2010s, where healthcare entrepreneurship started evolving. There was another explosion, there was another leap. And and there was a new era of innovations that were coming up. How did this look like? That was when we started seeing an explosion of digital health. Now, the first digital health platform I built was in 2014. And that was just when the conversation around digital health was beginning to become an item. So people started talking about telemedicine platforms. People started building mobile apps that could do a lot of very interesting aspects. Wearable devices started showing up in the system where people could now track their vitals and get all the information they need medically through just the wearables that they have, and all those things coming up. So companies like Fitbit, companies like Peloton, they came up with innovations that were now in the space of digital health, in the space where people could now relate with their health on a daily basis. When we started having, as we moved on in the 2010s, then we started hearing and talking about AI. So people started leveraging AI to do a lot of diagnostics. They started leveraging AI in drug development. They started leveraging AI in patient care management. And this is all after in the 2010s, where people were now testing out all these things. First of all, looking at how safe they could be in the healthcare space. But most importantly, the bold ones started making very, very bold moves in getting these coming into the system. So you look at platforms like Path AI, which has played a very important role in pathological diagnosis. And it was received and was adapted very well. And it's contributing a lot in terms of pathological diagnosis. Now, we also had started seeing a rise in the 2010s. The third thing we started seeing was a rise in telehealth, in health tech funding. Now, people started identifying that individuals with the ideas and the know-how and the technology to be able to build these platforms was worth some attention from all these funding agencies. So we started seeing a lot of funding moving into healthcare startups. We started seeing especially people who are focused in digital health getting a lot of attention from these venture capitalist firms, from private equity firms. Now, I can give you an example in the case of Livongo. Now, they are mainly focused on chronic disease management, and when they went public in 2019, they were valued at about $3 billion, and this just caused a lot of financial maturity in the healthcare startup space. The last thing that happened in this space was in regulatory advancements. So what we noticed during these times and in the 2010s was that a lot of things in the FDA and other regulatory bodies, they began to adapt to the rapid growth in just basically healthcare entrepreneurship. So we started seeing them creating different pathways to the approval of these health products. And how could they approve some of these wearable devices early? How could they approve some of these telemedicine platforms early? So if you look at something like SAMD, this is just software as a medical device. So this was developed approved by FDA, and it paved the way to just healthcare startups which needed to be approved and to be moved forward. So how is to relate to the future of healthcare? What should we be looking at as far as how healthcare has evolved from these big companies, the big pharma companies, the big medical equipment manufacturing companies, through the big hospitals, going all the way through the biotech and medtech companies in the 1990s and then the early 2000s, and then moving all the way now into a lot of digital health in the 2010s, moving into AI adoption, looking at all the regulatory adaptations that have happened over the period to be able to accommodate this. Where does this trend lead, and where is this leading us to? And this is what we are going to be discussing in our next episode. And if you understand this properly, it gives you the opportunity to understand that every single thing that you want to do has been rooted on something in the past and is becoming increasingly easier because of all the evolutions and all the things that have happened in healthcare in the most recent times. So we will be looking at some of these things in the next episode, and we'll be expanding more into how or where we are now in present day, and what the future, especially in 2025, what you should be focusing on as far as healthcare technology is concerned. So once again, this has been another very exciting episode of the Think Clinical podcast. My name is Hamza. Tune in next week for the next episode of this, and we will talk to you and see you soon.